This is the Rugby Ascendant podcast with Envia Velman and Chris Wyatt.
We chat with Colonel Chris Wyatt, the American with the big beard, the one that we know loves South African rugby. We had a chat with him last week in the first episode of this new series. And today we'll have a chat to him about last weekend's semi-finals in the URC, what to expect from the final this weekend, and also looking ahead at what the Springboks are expected to do against Wales. We'll put the timestamps on here from where you can jump ahead to if you want to skip past some of the conversation. So let's get to it. Without further ado, hello, Chris.
Hey, how's it going? How are you doing today?
I'm not doing much better. I caught a bug at Loftus, and it had me man down a couple of days, but I'm better now, ready for this weekend, for the action. I wanted to talk to you briefly about what happened last weekend. We were both at Loftus. We watched the game there live. And then I want to talk to you about what's going to happen this weekend. So firstly, what was your general impression of the way the Bulls approached that game against Leinster? How did they manage to win that game against basically the island national team?
Well, I think Jake White is a master of deception. I think Jake White had his team up for what was going on throughout the week. I wasn't able to attend the press conferences during the week. I don't know if you caught any of those. I was out and about, but I did see his comments trying to really downplay about, talking about we only have one person that's ever been in the final, Sergio Peterson, and it's this team is inexperienced. We're so young, and Cameron Hanekom, he's only 21. Hey, did you hear Cameron Hanekom's 21? I don't know if you heard, Marcus, but Cameron is 21. So I just thought I'd let you know that. No, Jake is a master. Brilliant stuff. Look, a couple years ago, people were giving Jake flack when this Bulls team was looking pretty sorry. And it's kind of like I think people reacted in the wrong way that I reacted when Rassie became the coach. I had no problem with Rassie becoming the coach, but his first test was in DC against Wales. Funny, here's his first test back against Wales in Twickenham. So neither one is South African. And he played all these debutantes, and I thought I was watching schoolboy rugby. I mean, these guys made so many mistakes. I'm like, what are you doing? We have to win this game. But I didn't know what Rassie was up to. He was seeing what talent he had, how the team gelled and working it out. And I think some of that was going on with Jake in the early stages when this team was so poor. Just a couple. I mean, look, when I say poor, they got to a final. I mean, let's not get carried away, but they were inconsistent. And I think Jake had a plan, and he still got a plan, and they're getting there. But as far as the game itself, oh man, we're going to talk about this. But the kicking was unbelievable. I mean, this is look. There's a lot of detractors who don't like Willie Leroux, and I don't know why. There's a lot of haters, but Willie is a great player. And this was, I think, one of his best club games ever. Absolutely brilliant. And Houston was brilliant too. And the amazing thing about Houston, he was getting abused. They were targeting him. Cheap shots, late tackles, taking him out. And he just got up like a Timex and kept ticking. And both of them played very well. The wings were also very good kicking the ball. But those two, I think, just an amazing job at fullback and a fly half. It was, I think the Bulls just stunned them. Leinster wasn't ready for this. They weren't prepared for it. Everyone's talking about the altitude and coming all the way, 12-hour flight, and this, that, and the other. But I think the game plan is what undid Leinster.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting point you made, because the Bulls changed their game plan. They were very expansive in the entire season, scored a lot of tries on the wings, and more of a running team than ever before. Actually, traditionally the Bulls are seen as playing 10-man rugby. The Stormers are supposed to be the guys with the flair, and it was the other way around the last couple of seasons. But last weekend, the Bulls went back to basics. They just dominated the scrums. Wilco Louw gave Andrew Porter a lesson in scrummaging, and even Gerard Steenekamp, he stepped up to the plate big time. And from what I heard, he was carrying an injury, shoulder injury. So to be able to do that well in the scrums says something about how good this Bulls scrum actually is.
No, I'd agree 100% on that. The Bulls. What's disappointing is that the Bulls won so many scrums and didn't win the penalty. I found that very irritating. It was obvious that Leinster was, collapsing or, turning sideways. It's just they were under a lot of pressure, and the Bulls should have won a whole bunch of scrum penalties. In fact, in my view, at some point there should have been a warning for Leinster in the scrums. They looked overmatched, which is shocking. And this is a great Leinster side, full of Irish nationals, some of the best players in the world, and the Bulls not only stood up to them, they dominated the scrum.
Yeah, that's the same Irish front row that's going to run out at Loftus in 2.5 weeks' time, huh?
Good luck.
Yeah. And also I see that Ireland has now lost Jamison Gibson-Park. He's out. They're not going to have him available. I mean, I don't know what happened at Loftus, because he was quite lively that first half. Then he went a bit quiet after he got taught a few rugby lessons. But now it seems to be he's out of the series.
Wow, I didn't see that. That's a shame because I'd rather beat Ireland with their best on the pitch. But they've got good players at the second level. But Gibson Park is he's a heck of a scrum half. That guy really gets it done. I mean, I think a lot of people underrate him. He's really impressive. And I mean, if Ireland had managed to win the World Cup, we'd be talking about what a great scrum half he is, I'm pretty sure.
Well, the thing that stood out for me, like I said, the Bulls changed their game plan a little bit, but what was important was the fact that they pulled in the Leinster defense by people running straight at the Irish, Harold Foster, Akker, of course, who else, and then even Marku. And that pulled in the defense, and it allowed both Goosen and Villiers, like you just said, to get those cross kicks in. And what was interesting on those cross kicks, more often than not, it was Eldridge Lowe or Cameron Hanekom waiting for those kicks at the edges. And they beat the Irish backs there, competing for the ball. That was interesting. Nice little tactic there.
And I'd have to say that, yeah, no, well, not just that. You had Hanekom. Creel was also doing a great job there, getting those balls. But Hanekom was, I think that's the best man of the match performance I've seen in a couple of months from anybody. He was a beast. I mean, he was unstoppable. Wilco, and we're talking so much about Cameron Hanekom. You know, he's only 21, by the way. I don't know if you know that, but we're talking so much about Cameron Hanekom that no one's talking about Elric Lowe. Elric Lowe had a brilliant game too.
Yes.
I mean, he was brilliant. They just, and you're right. That's that. We didn't lose balls in the middle of the pitch. Those high balls were gathered in, and not just that. Elric Lowe would go on a tear and pick up 15 or 20 meters. I don't know how many meters he got in the end, but that was I'm sorry, Cameron Hanekom. Well, both of them did that. It was really. I don't want to say sublime because that's quiet. This was raucous. It was. Look, I up in the press box. I went down to the pitch as well. This was an event. It's a shame there are just 30-some thousand there, but we appreciate 30,000 being there. I do hope that the place is sold out. I know that I went to look at tickets a couple of days ago, and everything on the west side of the stadium was pretty much gone. There were like 18 seats left. That's a good sign.
I think they sold out as we speak, because last night Willem Strauss, the Bulls president, said that there were 1,000 tickets left. That means there's going to be 52,000 people at Loftus. And that's an interesting point that you raised, because he also said, Willem Strauss said, this is the first time since 2009 that we're going to have a full Loftus. That's basically going to be 52,000 South African supporters, because I dare you to find one single Glasgow supporter in that crowd. I don't think they're going to find anybody there. And that was a big issue this week in social media. All the European teams, not the Scottish so much, more the Irish, complaining about the fact that the final is so far away, and Leinster should be guaranteed a playoff spot and guaranteed the final venue, and I don't know what else. Seems to be a lot of niggle around the fact that the top finishing team gets home ground advantage. They want it to be skewed a bit in their favor, like the Champions Cup. Go play it at Tottenham or something like that.
Well, I think that the problem here is that 3 years, 3 finals, all on South African soil, and the Europeans are just a little bit bumhurt about that. You know what? Get over it. This competition is so much more interesting, so much better, so intriguing, and in my view, it's going to be surpass the French and the Premier League. Those two, in my view, this is where it's at. URC is the action, and you know, if you're upset that the finals in South Africa the third year, you're really going to be bent out of shape next year when the fourth one's back at DHL Greenpoint Stadium.
Yeah, in your dreams, man. This Bulls is going to dominate for the next decade, I'm telling you now. Jacob's got this plan. You know, he's got Cameron Hanekom. He's only 21, and he's going to be around for a couple of years still. So we've got a long way to go with this team. And they all signed, by the way, on a serious note. They all signed again for 3 years, staying on. Jake is staying on for another 3 years till 2027. I can see this Bulls team maturing. I mean, I saw that one guy from Leinster running onto the pitch. I just can't remember his name right now. It was his 280th game or something ridiculous. I mean, that's a kind of experience you can't buy. And this Bulls team is going that way very quickly with a fairly young team. It's sort of ominous, don't you think?
Yeah. But listen, the Stormers, we've got Brock Harris. He has 1,400 test under his belt, so we'll be okay. No, but listen, 2 points. Number one, it's the first one is that don't worry, the Stormers will dominate next year. We'll start feeding Monty before the game so he doesn't miss between the uprights there and make his kicks. And number two, is Cameron Hanekom old enough to sign a contract? I'm not sure. Just checking.
Yeah. Is he legally off age? You know, he's only 21. Listen, someone else that really stood out for me, and against Benetton, I gave him a bit of shtick, and that was Sergio Peterson. he got very short notice that he's going to, have to go on the field quickly when Kirtley got injured. And just before that, he had an 8-week layoff, having to rest those compulsory 8 weeks to be able to play in the Currie Cup, which means Jake was eyeing him as a Currie Cup kind of level player. Then he had to go on to replace Kirtley Arendse, Springbok World Cup winning back winger, scrum cap wearing. Yeah, that's an official South African title. You have to wear a scrum cap and be elusive and all that kinds of things. And last against Benetton, he didn't impress me. First half against Leinster, he didn't really impress me. Got a yellow card as well. And then Jake told us at the press conference, he gave him a bit of a bollocking at halftime, saying to him, listen, bro, if you want to go for the intercept, go for the intercept. Don't do this half-hearted sort of just sticking your hand out and hoping it sticks kind of thing. Go for it or go home. Go big or go home. And he stepped up. He won us the game at the end of the day. And I mean, to step into Kirtley Arendse's shoes, that's a big ask. And he did it. I'm impressed with that.
Well, absolutely. And Arendse, he got a couple of tries before he went out in that game, early in the previous game. And you can see the impact when he was lost and Sergio wasn't there. He's a great player. Of course, I'm a fan because, he comes from down south.
It was the only guy who's ever played in a URC final.
Yeah, that's right, with the Stormers. But seriously, I think that Jake was right to talk to him. But I mean, we've talked about the defense, the incredible defense. We might talk about that more here before we get through this discussion today. But the Bulls standing up and their discipline, not being offside, not entering from the side, not causing a dumb turnover late in the game to give Leinster a chance to kick the ball down for that line out and then that rolling maul. That's what won the game. But honestly, the difference in the game was Sergio Peterson chasing down that kick, bouncing off a Leinster player's shoulder and driving in for that. And boy, what a charismatic finish and flourish to that try when he jumped up in the air and did the belly fly. That was classic rugby try. I mean, look, Sergio, he's a good player. I mean, it's the Bulls signed him for a reason. I'm glad to see him get his due, but he's going to need to step up like that again on Saturday. Otherwise, we may have some problems.
The only thing that bothered me about that try, and I hear you, that showboating was quite impressive. I mean, that was quite a dive. But he should have tried to get closer to the poles because Goosen went and missed that kick. Nah? It was a crucial 2 points.
Listen, you're not going to get arguing for me. This is the thing that irritates me in sevens. There's only 7 guys in the pitch. When you streak down the pitch and then there's no one within 50 meters and you go over in the corner, wake up, go under the poles, because especially in sevens, those conversions are critical. Yeah, I held my breath when that kick was missed, but Goosen had been making them all day. So other than the drop goal attempts, but I thought that he might be able to slot that. So yeah, I was a little apprehensive because that meant that Leinster could come down and convert a try and win the game. But it worked out. Yes, and it was quite a charismatic, flourishing finish to that try.
Yeah, it reminds me of Brighton Paulson. Remember, he used to do backflips after he scored the tries. Yeah. Just talking about Leinster quickly, we'll talk about the team selections and stuff a bit later. Leinster, I think, got caught unawares with the kicking. Jake made quite a point of the fact that they changed their tactical kicking. Rather than going for contestables, they went for long, deep kicks. Taking the Irish back three out of it, taking James Lowe out of it, most specifically, because that guy, the one time he got the ball, he went and scored a try. That's just the kind of player that he is. And I think Jake did well taking him out of the game.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely correct. Really, the back three were really marginalized for Leinster, and it really, I think, put them on the back foot, and we're trying to adjust to the game as it went. And then on top of that, all the pressure they were under in the scrum. I mean, I don't know what Leo Cullen's thoughts on this. We did talk to him in the press conference afterwards, and I don't think anybody really asked the question. But I mean, really, he must have been thinking, I've got to change something here. I mean, if at least he dominated the scrums, they would have an advantage there. But they were in trouble there. They were in trouble with that back three not being in play. Essentially, they're pretty much taken out of the game. And if you could take James Lowe out of the game, you've got a fighting chance. I mean, look, whether you like the guy or not, or you think his ponytail is attractive or not, I think it's not. The guy is an unbelievable player, and every time he's on the pitch, I'm watching him, no matter where he is, because he will break away and just burn you. It's like Kirtley Arendse can do.
I was quite surprised how long his hair actually is when he took it out of that ponytail. He's got a mane. He doesn't have hair. He looks like a lion or something. I was impressed by the length of it.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. Tell me one thing. Do you think Leinster underestimated the Bulls? or overestimated their own ability, being riding high on the Irish team kind of hype and the likes. Do you think they maybe went on that field thinking they've already won the game?
That's something we talked about. And I said, I hope that was the case. I hope Munster would come in here and just assume that, hey, this is ours. We're going to win this. But I didn't get that sense, particularly, listening to Leo after the game. And I didn't see it from the players on the pitch. I mean, I could see guys from the very beginning. Remember, it was a frenetic pace early on. The game was really, it was, full pace, both sides. And I think they were really, I don't think they took the Bulls. I don't think they took the Bulls for granted, but I do think that they underestimated the Bulls and didn't really anticipate this game plan and didn't expect the Bulls to go back to what they were known for. I mean, like you said, look at the log. The Bulls, I think, scored more points than anybody by 60 or 70 points, something like that. They had so many points this season, and that's a little bit uncharacteristic for the Bulls. You expect the Stormers to have 500 or 600 points in a season, but I think this really caught them off guard, and they weren't prepared for it. But there's a lot of talk about it. I don't think that Leinster, because think about it, they just choked in the Champions Cup, and their fans are very angry about that. I mean, that drop goal not going through and winning it in regulation, and then they lose it for the third time in a row. And they've not won the URC 3 times in a row. Well, they didn't know that coming in 2 times. So I don't think that they were like, hey, we're the Irish Nationals. We're going to dominate here. I suspect there might have been a little bit in some of the individual players' thoughts about, hey, I'm going to be back here in a few weeks. So let's see how it goes, and maybe thinking ahead. But no, I don't see Leinster's having underestimated Bulls. I just think the game plan just blitzed them. It wasn't something they were prepared for, and they couldn't adapt to it well enough in the game. But hey, we're saying this, but the margin was 5 points. It wasn't like the Bulls blew them out.
Yeah, but that shows you the quality of this Leinster team, how good they are. Because I was just thinking, people kept talking about player 24 with the crowd, but they forget about player 25, the altitude. And you mentioned that the game was played at a frenetic pace. And it showed towards the end. They were dead on their feet. Leo Collins said, they were fine, but they weren't. They were dead on their feet. And they didn't do the clever thing like Munster did and Glasgow did by lying around all over the place, faking injuries. They just went for it. And it showed. It carried in play 25, I think, won the game for the Bulls at the end.
Yeah, no, I'm a little tired of that nonsense and people not being, they should have given a card for that in those games. Every play, somebody's down, and then magically they're all right back in the game seconds later. That's very dirty pull. I think the Bulls, other than this, the starters for the Bulls who were still out in the pitch late in the game, they were also kind of knackered. That was a hard fought contest. It was Titanic struggle between 2 really talented teams. And I don't understand why the Bulls were such underdogs by the odds makers. They had the same record. The Bulls scored more points. If you look at all the stats for the season, almost everything was nearly identical for these 2 squads. So I don't know why Leinster, in late the season, they weren't strong. They struggled a lot. They did take their South African tour a few weeks back for granted. That's for sure, while they focused on the Champions Cup. But I don't know why they were such underdogs. Of course, maybe because Jake kept saying, they're such underdogs. What are they supposed to do? Cameron Hannigan's only 21 years old. It's a huge challenge.
Yeah. What do you think about the ref? Everybody's asking me, talk about the ref. Now, we have a policy here. We don't bash the refs personally. We talk about, I don't accept that anybody's got bias or anything. My opinion of the ref specifically was he was overwhelmed. He was out of his depth, and he didn't know how to react to it, and he favored the favorite team, if I can call it that, unconsciously. I don't think there was particular bias. I think it was more a question of this guy just not up to it.
Yeah, so I'm on record about complaining about officiating, but mostly about the constant law changes that World Rugby puts out there. That's my big issue. And also the uneven level of officiating between Down Under and Australia and New Zealand and South Africa and Europe. It's all over the place. We've seen some incredible improvement in Major League Rugby officiating because Jonathan Kaplan was brought on as an advisor and a teacher and a mentor for the officials over there. So he came over to help with Major League Rugby in the States. And from one season to the next, we saw a remarkable change just because of that influence. And I think that maybe Nigel Owens and a few others might bring him out and dust him off and have some sort of a senior mentor program for some of these officials, because it really is a problem. Now, let me talk about this official specifically. I'm very disappointed. And I don't like to bash specific officials unless they're French. Then I'm willing to do it. But
I agree.
Sam Grove White, I think, is a very talented rising official. And I've been impressed with most of the games I've watched him call. I think he's done a pretty good job. But I agree. For some reason, he seemed out of his depth in this game. And maybe subconsciously he did see Leinster not see the penalties. But you have to be blind. And it's not just Sam Grove White. What's with the TMO? I mean, that clothesline tackle of Klusen could have injured his neck, could have broke his neck. I mean, that should have been a red card, and it wasn't even a penalty. Nothing came out of that. That's insane. And it wasn't the first time. It was obvious that Klusen was being targeted throughout the game, intentionally trying to harm him or intimidate him. And that was just the final straw. Now, they might say, well, it was a desperation to save a try. But no, I'm not going to buy that because it wasn't a one-off. It happened throughout the game. So, here's the thing I'll say about rugby officiating, too. People are officials in a basketball court. They run up and down 30 meters this way, 30 meters that way. They stop half the time. They look around. Soccer officials, they do run around. But let's face it, it's a boring game and nothing happens. You don't run, sprint full out most of the time. But rugby, you do that. The most challenging position on the field is not scrum half or a tight head prop or fly half. It's the rugby official. That guy's got to be, or gal's got to be everywhere. And I think that rugby officials are the most impressive and most physically fit of all the officials in any sport that you're ever going to find. That said, and I'm sorry to say this, but I mean, Sam Grove-White's performance was atrocious. 4 penalties on Leinster. There were more penalties in the scrum on Leinster than that weren't called. And then these efforts to take players down. And here's the other thing. I see this in social media, a lot of chat going back and forth. And I called it on the scene because I watched the replay, and a lot of people are upset, blaming the Leinster player for when Villiers was taken out of that injury. And he is actually at fault, but it wasn't the player who hit him that caused the injury. He was hit late. That's where the problem was. And then he was hit in the back of the head by, I think it was Marco van Staden. His knee caught him. That's what caused the injury. But he never should have been in that position on the ground. It was a cheap shot. It was a yellow card at a minimum, and nothing happened. And now we don't have Villiers, I don't think. I don't think we're going to have him for the game. This is disgraceful. You cannot allow this thuggish behavior to happen. And it's thuggish behavior because it was a cheap, late shot, and it was very late. It wasn't like it was, marginal. Well, he's releasing the ball. No, this needs to stop in rugby because it ruins careers. I mean, in the National Football League, Peyton Manning was taken out by a thug player from the New Orleans Saints a good 8 or 10 seconds after the play was over, and he was dumped on his neck, and it ruined the rest of his career. The greatest quarterback in the NFL history had a career that it ended decent. He won another Super Bowl, but he should have been setting records and impressing people for another 10 years, and instead his career was cut short. You cannot tolerate thuggish behavior like this, and that's what was going on. I don't usually criticize Leinster, but the cheap shots on Villiers, the cheap shots on Johan Huijsen never should have been allowed, and Sam Grove-White tolerated that, and that's why Villiers was out, and that's a disgrace because he was the most exciting player on the pitch last week.
He was the mastermind behind the Bulls winning this game, and that's what worries me about this coming weekend. He's not going to be playing, but we'll talk about that just now. Just talk briefly about Glasgow. You and I were watching that game afterwards, sort of with the sound off and everything, and we just saw, yellow card to Glasgow, defending. And right at the end, Munster got a red card, and that sort of sealed the game. But Glasgow played out of their skins, and I was wondering how much that advert they put on the big screen there, saying they're advertising the final against the Bulls at Munster. How much of a motivation that was for the Glasgow players? What do you think?
I think it might have been some motivation, but you're right. The yellow cards kept coming, and I was getting a little bit nervous there. But you do notice there was actually a development. The more beer we drank, the less often the yellow cards came.
Yeah, I know. But we did our part for the Glasgow tour. We made a point of it. We helped. You're right. Tell me the way that Munster played. They typically, not Munster, Glasgow played. They're typically a very attacking side, one of the best attacking sides in the competition. But on Saturday, they stepped up the defense massively, and they took out the Munster backs completely. Munster was never really in the game at all, and then Glasgow just hit. Whenever they had an opportunity, they took that opportunity and they scored those 2 tries, and that sort of sealed the game for them. A completely different game, and I think I would put this down to the tactical news of Franco Smith. No? That seems to be my biggest worry for this weekend. Franco Smith being the coach of Glasgow.
No, I think that's a huge 16th man on the pitch for them is that coach. He's really changed the culture there, in my view. And you're right. Glasgow, I mean, once again, we're talking about defense. We talk about the Bulls defense. I mean, other than Sergio Peterson, that great try, we've really been talking mostly about the defense of Bulls against Leinster. And it's the same thing against Glasgow. I don't think Munster was ready for that defense. I think it surprised them. It really caught them off guard. I know Munster was incredibly frustrated. I mean, did you see R.G. Snyman out there? Boy, if he was fit to be tied. I mean, a couple of times I thought he was going to start a fight. He was so angry because things weren't going Munster's way. And I love RJ Snyman as a player, but I'm glad it didn't go Munster's way because I didn't want to see them in the final. Look, all things being equal, I'd rather play Glasgow, even though they deserve to be in the final. I'd rather play Glasgow. But I think that's the difference was, once again, a side that saw something, and there's two parts to it. You can bring a different game plan and strategy, but you have to execute it. I mean, if you bring it and you're not full on, then it doesn't matter. They can adjust because you haven't perfected it. But the Bulls perfected their approach with the kicking game and what they were doing. And then I think Glasgow did the same thing. Their defense really stifled Munster. I mean, I was surprised how long it was before they actually got a try. It was, that doesn't seem like Munster. But Munster wasn't particularly good earlier in the season, in my view. They were surging late in the season, and that's why I was nervous about them. They did the same thing last year. They came on late in the season, and you kind of forgot about Munster for a little bit, and then suddenly they're the best team in the league. And well, of course, I mean, that helps when my Stormers don't bother to show up on the pitch for the final. But hey, what can we say about that game last year? I think that's enough.
Interesting thing about last weekend, that game specifically, is the referees and Andrea Piardi, who's now going to be the same. He's going to be the referee in this final as well. And I think Glasgow had a bit of a struggle with him in terms of he's quite strict. That's why the yellow cards came from. Do you think that's going to play any role this weekend? What did you think of him as a coach, as a referee, and what do you think he's going to be like this weekend?
Listen, I have favorites when it comes to officials, and he's quickly becoming one of my favorites. Andrea Piardi is a really good official who is a no-nonsense guy. He doesn't take crap out there. And it's great, hearing the Italian accent instead of, an Afrikaans or an English or Irish accent, or something from down under. No, it's I think that you're right. He doesn't broker any nonsense, and they were kind of surprised by the yellow cards, and I think that he'll be the same this weekend. We're not going to see the timid officiating we saw from Sam Grove-White. We're going to see Andrea Piardi, no nonsense in there, and look, if you got an infringement, he's going to call it on you, and it's not going to hurt his feelings. Also, I think he listens to the TMO. He makes the decision, but he does listen. Some of these officials are really annoying. They go TMO, they go to the TMO, and they're talking to TMO, and like, no, that's not what I see. Give me a different angle so I can get the answer I want.
Yeah.
But Piardi listens, and then he makes his decision. And I think he's also got some good help on the side. I think Frank Murphy and Craig Evans are going to be the side judges for this thing. Those are both really good officials. And so I think that you get an Irishman and a Welshman and an Italian. This is really a Euro. Hey, how come there's no South African? The TMO better be somebody, Van der Westhuizen or somebody better be South African, because I didn't see who the TMO is, but we've got no South African officials.
Yeah, I wonder if there's going to be anyone South African. Anyway, talking about this final now, it's now going to be Glasgow versus the Bulls. I think Bulls is like 80% chance of winning apparently, and Glasgow's only got 20%. Do you think those are accurate odds?
I think that's nonsense. That's utter nonsense. Last year, I think a lot of people expected the Stormers to win back-to-back, and Munster came and just abused them. I mean, they just tossed them around like rag dolls out there at Greenpoint Stadium, DHL Greenpoint Stadium. I don't think that that's a realistic expectation. People saying 80-20. I think it's 50-50. I think both sides have a fair, even chance to win this game. And yes, the 52,000 screaming fans will be there. But players concentrate on the game most of the time. That does have an effect. One thing I will say, and I'm going to admonish South African fans for this. I don't usually do this, but some of the behavior recently for South African fans has been very French, not respecting the kicker. That's not cool. I mean, I don't care for that. Respect. That's a very tough job. Don't be out there making noise, waving your arms, acting like a fool. That's what they do in the National Football League in America. That's not what rugby fans do. The French fans are atrocious at this. They're disrespectful to kickers. I saw it in the World Cup time and again, and it really annoyed me. And I have seen that trend picking up in South Africa lately. So if South Africans get mad at me for that, then you're welcome to be mad at me. But let's respect the kicker. Let's let that person. I mean, you try to kick that ball. I've done it. It's not the easiest thing to do, especially when you're on the side at an angle. You've got such a narrow little window to kick that through, and then you've got wind, you've got altitude, you've got you've just got the vagaries of life, the planet spinning at 17,000 miles per hour. It's not easy. So that kind of annoying me. But if the 52,000 fans could be I know a lot of people keep saying the 24th man, but I would say the 16th man, because the other guys aren't on the field. It's a 16th man to me, because the 16th man are the fans who are affecting the game as it's going on. I think it will have an impact, but I do think it's about 50-50. Glasgow can win this game, but I'm saying the Bulls are going to win this one by, I'd say, probably 7-10 is my expectation.
Well, the big question I'm going to ask you is, we just talked about it earlier. Willie Leroux is probably going to be out. We don't know, but while we're recording this, that he is in fact out, but everything points to the fact that he's not going to be playing. What do you think, what can Jake do? Who can he put in that place? Because that is such a tactical critically important position for the Bulls this season. And we talked about Willie taking on the second receiver, for example. If Goosen was taken, Willie played almost fly off to a degree. There's no other player in the Bulls team that I can think of that could just seamlessly step up into Willie's shoes. I'm very, very worried about the fact that Willie can't play.
Well, I think the best option probably for Jake is Goosen at fullback and Chris Smith in at fly half. I think that's probably his best option. We'll see what he does. But then he has nobody on the bench. You have to rely on one of the players on the pitch he can kick. But that may be his best option. But I mean, as good a player as Johan Goosen is, it is a fall off. I mean, look, anybody right now, anybody in the world, from what Willie did last week, would be a drop off from his performance last week. And I say that unequivocally. But look, in the interest of full disclosure, I've always been a fan of Billy LaRue since he was with the Cheetahs. But in the interest of full disclosure, I also criticize him when he does poorly. When in the 2019 World Cup, when someone made a picture of him with a big catcher's mitt the size of his body and dropping the ball because he was butterfingers, I called him out on that. Just like I called out Sia Khaleesi for what I thought was a substandard performance as a captain in the British and Irish Lions series. Now his coach in France is calling him chubby, out of shape, and not up to the task.
Transparent nogal. Yeah.
Yes. Not existent. He's not, you don't even know he's on the pitch.
No, I'm thinking that the solution you came up with was a good idea of Chris Smith being there. And I think David Kriel, I know, is a very good kicker. I actually watched him practice his place kicks. Even Keegan Johannes is a very good player, very good kicker. He's actually supposed to be a fly-off. I didn't know that, Keegan Johannes. So that's another option that you might take into consideration. He's not really a scrum-off. He's a fly-off. So that's something that he might consider.
Yeah, it's a shame that a certain former Cheaters player that just retired isn't available for Saturday's game. You could play him at fullback. You could play him at fly half. You could play him at scrum half. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. Well, we all know. Umruan. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris, the other thing that happened that's quite important is that it's time for international rugby again. And Rassie has now announced his first Springbok team since that game, that last final game, the one that I don't know if you know, but we beat the All Blacks by 1 point there. So since that game, that's the first team that we've now announced, and quite a few surprises, I would think. What did you think of the team?
Well, we did win that game by 1 point. In fact, we won the World Cup by 3 points.
Yeah, 1-1-1.
One in each round. That's no better. So what do I think about this team that Rassie's picked? Given all the injuries that are out there and all the options for him, I think it's a pretty good team. I know a lot of people are concerned about the back three because we don't have Kane and Moody. We don't have Kurtley Arnsey, who could have been playing there. But I think this is a good squad. And look, I mean, this is the bench. Bongi Ombanambi, Franz Malherbe, Ben Jason Dixon, a nice rising star in that position. Grant Williams, I think, is incredible as a scrum half. Sasha Feinberg, Ngumzulu, his time is now. And Damien Dealende on the bench. I mean, that's a bench. I mean, I left a couple players off there. But I mean, those are top flight players. But anyway, across the board, I think this is good. I'm glad to see Malcolm Marks in as a hooker. That's going to be fantastic. The other things is I thought Quagga hadn't been back from his injury, so I'm very excited to see that he's back from injury. Mm-hmm. I think picking Peter Steph Dutoy as captain is a wise move. That's pretty good. And then the rest of the squad, it's pretty good. And the one unsung hero of the World Cup, the guy that was absolutely impressive game after game after game after game, is there, Jesse Creel. Yeah. I'm so happy to see that.
I knew you were going to say Jesse Creel. I've always loved Jesse Creel, especially when it was at the Bulls. So sad to see him go, but yeah, no, I agree with you. The one thing that I am a bit concerned about, and that's not the back three. I tell you what, Edwin van der Merwe is right up there on the same level as a Kirkley or a Kanan. I'm telling you, he is exceptionally good. Anyway, I'm worried about that number 10 position. Jordan Hendrickse is not even making the Lions team as the first choice fly-off. He played centre the last couple of games. I know he's a good player and everything. But why would he be good enough for the Springboks if he wasn't good enough for the Lions? What do you think about that?
Well, I would take exception to that. I don't think he's not good enough for the Lions. I just think Sanili Nohamba has been lights out. I mean, that's like Jake said the other day. Look at the Bulls. I mean, you've got Chris Smith sitting on the bench. The guy's got, all these caps. He's very talented. I know a lot of people dismiss Chris Smith over the years, but he's a fine fly half. And it's the same situation here. I think Jordan Hendricks is much better than his brother, to be honest. I think he's much better. I don't think Jaden is nearly the same quality, but anyway, we'll see what happens here. But no, I think that he's good enough to be the starter there. But Sanili Nohamba has just been lights out. It's just the guy's playing amazing.
The thing
but
is,
he's injured now.
No, he's not. He's not. He's injured, but he's not in the team because he's injured. He's not. He's in the team because he's not good enough. Apparently, I'll tell you why. As a fly-off specifically, Jordan Hendricks, from what I've gathered from what we've been speaking to people about, he's in the team because of his defense, and his defense is over 80% in terms of tackles made, whereas the others are all below 70. Mani is the worst of them all, and Sanelli Nohamba is way down at the bottom. And I think it's more a question of the Springbok game plan working or fitting Jordan Hendricks better than it would, for example, a Nohamba. Nohamba's, for us, is kind of a game that he plans to play. Nohamba's just too small. He might have all the heart in the world, but it's one thing being a small winger or a small fullback. It's a completely different thing being a small fly-off. You're not going to be able to make it on an international level. Not with that kind of size, I don't think.
No, I think you make a very good point, and you unintentionally give a great compliment to Rassie Erasmus. In 2019, it's a point that I made about Rassie. I said, I don't think Rassie picked the best South African players. I think he picked the best team that was possible. And this is a case of that. I agree with you there. Hendricks is good on defense, and Nohamba gets bowled over. He's too small. And then, so it's a fair point. That's a very fair point. This is the best chance for them to not get burned with that player in that position. No, I think you're going to be surprised. I think they'll do a pretty good job. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I think it'll go well. And if it doesn't, then Rassie will make the change necessary at the point he has to. Rassie won't wait till 40 minutes if it's going badly. He'll make the change sooner. So I think it'll go well. But across the board, other than that one you point out there, I mean, I think it's pretty good. I mean, how old is Faf now? 72? He's playing scrum half again.
Yeah, Faf could definitely sign his own contracts. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. No, I said I think the lineup looks pretty good.
Yeah, sure. A couple of things that stood out for me. Firstly, is Andre Esterhuizen at last giving a chance at 12, even though Talenda's on the bench. To see how he combines with Jesse Kriel last year during the World Cup, there were heated debates about whether he should be starting or the Allende should be starting and everything else. And the Allende's been around for also like ages and ages. Seems like he's been there since the beginning of rugby. And Esterhuizen, I think, I'd love to see that kind of combination. I don't know how well he's going to combine with Jordan Hendricks at 10, but with Jesse Kriel there, I'm not worried about that. And the other thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is Fassi. Very good attacking fullback, but not necessarily the best defender in the world. What do you think about that one?
He's terrible on defense. No. Yeah, I got you there. Yeah, okay. Well, we can't let anybody get back to that part of the field. They got to be stopped before they get to Fassi, because I mean, I've seen him been faked out of his jock more than once. And also, it seems at times that his head sort of disappears in the game. If you know what I mean, he's kind of like he's distracted. Like I don't know, he sees some cheerleaders on the sidelines or something. I don't know. I'm not trying to pick on him, but I mean, when he's on, the guy is amazing. But sometimes he's just a little bit off. So hopefully he has a good game. But I mean, we're stuck. We have to go with this because Billy was taken out on a cheap shot. So Billy LaRue would have been there.
Well, not this weekend because he's playing. We would have played for the Bulls in the final.
Well, yeah, I get your point, but I'm looking forward to the Irish series.
Yeah, sure, I agree with you.
Some of these players are going to mix in for the Irish, and I don't think we're going to see Billy back for that unless we get lucky. So,
I would have liked to see Keon Horn at fullback, the Lions fullback.
I like Kuhnhorn, and a couple years ago I wasn't sold on him, but the more I see him play and the more he plays, the more I'm convinced. Yeah, he's up to the task. Yeah, I suppose that might be one surprise that Kuhnhorn isn't in this selection. That especially since this is kind of an experimental selection, kind of like it was when they came to the States for Rossi's first Test match against Wales back in what was that 20 whatever it was anyway. 2018. Anyway, but maybe that's what it was. Yeah, 2018. That's right. Yeah, so I'm getting my years all mixed up as they go by. But I think that's a little bit surprised. But there are 4 debutants in the lineup, so we'll see how they do.
Just one thing about Edwin van der Merwe that I learned is that he's very strong physically. Apparently, he can bench press as much as a prop can. And you remember that one try that he stopped, where he actually pulled the guy back from the try line. I don't know if you saw that one. Just shows you how strong this guy, even though he's quite small. I'm very excited about this guy. He's a huge prospect, and maybe there's a saying in Afrikaans that says, the one man's death is the other man's bread. Een man se dood is die ander man se brood. This is sort of what it happens, The injuries to Kirtley and Kanan and everybody else maybe opened the door for someone like Edwill, and then once he's in, he's going to stay there. He's good enough to be able to stay there, I think.
No, I think he is, and it's it's next man up. That's what you have to have. You have to have philosophy that you don't have a drop off from one level to the next. And if you can do that, I mean that's a luxury. But I think South Africa has a luxury. There are players we're not even mentioning here who are up and coming. You also have the talent that can make this squad at some point. But what I find fascinating about South African rugby is how little guys hit like a ton of bricks. I mean, look at Cheslin Colby, look at Curtly Arendse, look at Ed Wolf. These guys don't tackle. They abuse guys twice their size in tackles. I think it's astonishing. You just talk about how Nohamba's small and gets brushed aside. That's true. But that isn't the case with Edwin Van der Merwe. That's definitely not the case with Cheslin Colby, man. It's like watching a traffic accident when he hits somebody. And it's the same with Curtly Arendse. People like, oh, he's soft. Curtly Arendse is not soft. That guy can take you out. And he's so smart. I mean, I'm so glad to see the success he's had. He's become one of my favorite players. You know, one thing about South African rugby is my favorite player rotates from time to time because another player comes up. Years ago, Billy was my favorite player. And then there's been many others. Peter Steph Dutoit was my favorite for a while. Dwayne Vermeulen was my favorite for a while. But I mean, you know, Curtly Arendse right now is my favorite South African player. And I'm so bummed that he's injured. And I hope that he gets back to see some of the tests this summer so we can actually see him out there.
Yeah, that's quite a but if Antoine Dupont could make it back with a similar injury, he might make it back. You know, he might be even more threatening with a mask on it, you know, like one of those Iron Man masks that they're wearing to protect the cheekbone. I'd love to see him back. One question I want to ask you. The once in a generation talent, allegedly, Sasha Feinberg and Gomezulu. What do you think his perfect position, his ideal position is? Because the Stormers, your Stormers, don't intend to play him at 10. It doesn't look like. They just keep on hammering away at Manu Libbok, you know. However much his form dropped off towards the end of the season, he just kept starting the games, stayed on the field. And Sasha Feinberg and Gomezulu, I'm going to say again, the supposedly once-in-a-generation talent, sits on the bench or plays fullback. I think that's the perfect position for him. Are they treating him fairly? What's the future for him?
Well, you raise a very good question. I think we have a challenge here, one that's very much akin to Damon Willemse. It's the same problem with Damon Willemse. He's so talented. What's his best position? Is it fullback? Is it fly half? Is it on the wing? We don't see him on the wing much anymore. But Sasha Feinberg, Ngumzulu has such a flexibility. He can play any of those positions equally well. I am not entirely sold with his kicking game, but then I think we just haven't seen enough of it, to be honest. A few times I've seen him kick. He's okay. Then maybe he's got that game. We just haven't seen it. So I'm not going to say that fly half is his natural position. Right now, I think the best place for him is actually fullback. I think he's very good in that role. I don't know if everyone agrees with that, but I think this is a guy. The first time I saw him, I said, "That's a buck. He's coming." And it's time. And I said, I said the same. Now, of course, Curtly played sevens. And Kanan, when I saw both of them the first time playing 15s, I said, these guys are going to be wellks. And all the South Africans like, you know what you're talking about. No, Sasha Feinberg, Ngumzulu, this guy is incredible talent. And so far on the pitch, he's just a really good guy. His behavior is good. You know, I mean, when Evan Ruiz came up, I loved him. But then, you know, his blood got the better of him. And he became kind of annoying for a season or two. And now Evan has cleaned up his game. He's behaving better. But that's not something we've seen with a player like Sasha. He's just, I think, from what I've seen on the pitch, been very humble. And I love to see that in a player. So I think that it's tough to say what his natural position is. Maybe it is fly half. I didn't see him play varsity or, you know, or high school or something like that. So I haven't seen enough of him. But watching him, the Stormers, the fact that he sits on the bench, I'm like, well, at least we got a great player coming off the bench at some point in the game. That's what I would say. But I think I've seen him equally perform excellent on the wing when he had to, because we had injuries at the Stormers or at fullback or at fly half. So look, I mean, I'm not gonna look a gift horse to the mouth. This guy's a really good, talented player, and I'll take him in any of those positions. And same with the Bucks. I mean, I might be a little bit nervous with him at fly half with the Bucks because I just haven't seen enough of him there. I'm okay with him doing that in the Stormers, especially given the way that Monty disappears in games. So anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on him. But I agree with him. He might be a once in a generation player.
The other guy that you mentioned quite briefly, but also a Stormer, which pains me to say, I'm kidding, is Ben Jason Dixon. That guy can defend like anything. And I think there's quite a lot of voices going up saying that he might be the next Peter Steph Toy. That kind of a machine, you know, tackling and running and everything else, the complete package. I'm quite excited about him. He can also play lock now. He's a good prospect.
Oh, absolutely. And I've seen him his first season up with the Stormers. It looked like he got kind of tossed around a little bit out there. He's a little bit out of his element. my view. That's my assessment.
Hmm.
But that changed very quickly. And this season, he has just been incredible. Listen, I'm calling the guy the Tasmanian Devil. So I don't know if I also, he's just a whirling dervish. He's a Tasmanian Devil. I don't know if that nickname will catch on, but to me, Ben Jason Dixon is the Tasmanian Devil. And I'm loving it. I'm actually loving it. He is an incredible talent, and he is quite flexible, as you say, but man, does he make the tackles. I mean, there's a few guys that just, that we see like that, like the Elric Lowe's, and now the Cameron Heinekems and the Ben Jason Dixons. Listen, if you're a South African rugby fan, boy, 2 World Cups in a row? No, it's time for a third. We've got the talent. We can make it happen, especially if we play Ireland, because they'll collapse.
Yeah, no, Ireland's going nowhere. Let's hope we don't. This doesn't come back to bite us. But anyway, no, it's surprising thing to me. South Africans have loose forwards popping out of the woodwork here. I mean, really top level loose forwards, flanks and eighth men, whatever, fast and agile and tall. Most of them tall. Being able to play all across the pitch. You've got Evan Roos, you've got Cameron Heinekom, you've got Elric Lowe, you've got Ben Jason Dixon, Peter Steph Toy, you name it. I mean, there's so many of them. An abundance of riches. I think Rassie's biggest problem is not who to pick, it's not who not to pick. It's like who do you choose and who do you leave out?
No, I think you're 100% correct on that. For Rassie, it's an embarrassment of riches, and so that, of course, in my view, puts the pressure on, because given so much talent, they should be winning. We shouldn't see any of this stuff where we're happy to win eight tests and lose 5 in a season. No, we should expect to see 13-0. Now, that's unrealistic, but if we don't get 11-2, we're going to be disappointed. I mean, that's a level of expectation. I mean, this is incredible. I mean, and all this despite Saru monkeying with selections and who can be on the team and all this stuff. I don't want to really get into that, but this is just, I mean, hey, South Africa. I mean, the economy may be in the crapper, politics may be confusing, but boy, I'll tell you what, rugby's exciting, and you've got a bright future. Just so much talent, and you got players that would be starters on national sides who are playing in Major League Rugby in the States because they can't crack a club side on this side. And they might be able to get on the Curry Cup squad as an experimental thing. But these are talented players that can play for Georgia, can play for the Eagles, can play for Italy, any of these countries. And they're off playing somewhere else because they can't even get a crack at playing for club rugby here in South Africa. That's a deep, deep, deep bench.
Interesting that we talked about who's included, but what's also interesting is who's not included. I'm surprised. I actually thought Siya Masuku was going to get a nod here. I mean, he had a season, one of the best seasons I ever seen. He turned the Sharks season around, made them win the Challenge Cup. He made a big contribution there. He might be a little old though. He's 27 already, and Jordan Hendricks is only 22. And the other surprise I was quite surprised about, the mission-wise, is Mani. I thought Mani might start this still, with maybe a backup on the fullback to make sure that he can kick to post. He's not even in the squad. That's a surprise.
Yeah, there's a number of surprises, and I think we should talk about those. You said Siya Masuku is a huge surprise for me. I thought he was a lock for this game. I thought that was going to be the starter. He is, look, I mean, lights out. The guy's played incredible. Really kept his team in competition this year. Monty Libbok, I'm not surprised that he didn't make this week's team. That doesn't surprise me. I mean, he had a terrible finish to the season. Look, I'm not going to beat Monty up, but we wouldn't have lost that game, and it wouldn't have all fallen apart at the end if he made a couple of kicks. I mean, just a couple, but he was horrible. Another one that kind of surprised me, to be honest, is that we don't see either Neethling Fouché or Andre Hugo Fenta. And I'm biased. I know where they play for, but I mean, Andre Hugo Fenta has been really coming up, but that one's kind of a surprise to me. And Neethling Fouché has just been lights out incredibly. So, I mean, but again, there's so much talent. There's so many players. But I think the real shocker here for most people who are genuine Springbok watchers is why Siya Masuku is not on the selection, and when he should have been the starter. But I mean, Rassie's the master at this. I mean, I can't second guess him. He's got it done. I mean, I second guessed him in that game against Wales in DC, and he knew what he was doing. So, yeah, but you're right. The age thing, if he doesn't get a crack soon, he's not going to be there ever, and that's a shame because he's really become a good talent.
Yeah, I spoke to Andre Pretorius about him. He coached him at Northwest University in the Varsity Cup many years ago, and he was quite impressed with the guy's work ethic. He carries around a bit of weight, but then he shook it off. That's why he didn't start for the Sharks for a while after he joined them in the URC and the likes. He had to first get back into shape. He wasn't in good shape, but he worked hard at it, and he made it. He made a difference, made a difference to the team. When I talk about the Wales side, they just announced it briefly, and I'm not even going to go into the names. Very, very young side. Warren Gatland has to start from scratch once again. And this is not the same kind of Wales that we played in 2018. They were on top of the world basically then, or very close to the top of the world. We were down in the doldrums. Now it's the other way around. And Rassie seems to like getting Springbok debutants against Wales. Seems they're sort of the weakest team that he can choose to make debuts against. What do you think of that?
Well, that's true, but we did lose that game in DC. We better not lose this game Saturday. That's what I've got to say. But I think, look, I'm not going to pick on Wales. I root for them occasionally, but they've been atrocious, and it couldn't happen to a nicer head coach to be saddled with a team that's. Look, I'm not a big fan of Warren Gatland. He's the one that started all the nonsense that British Irish Lions series can play about Marius van der Westhuizen and no sanctions for World Rugby, but they can sanction Rassie, and I'm still bitter about that. That was unacceptable. Listen, I mean, the tough thing for Wales is, who? Okay, Aaron Wainwright. All right, okay. Rio Dyer. Okay. All right. Gareth Thomas. And then who are the rest of these guys? I mean, Matthew Screech, maybe, but people we've never heard of. And maybe that'll be good for Wales down the road, but I seriously doubt that this team has gelled as a cohort and really will pull anything off. There's been a lot of talk, and we talked about the press box, several of us. I think you and I might have chatted about this. In the URC, maybe there's too many Welsh sides and need to consolidate a little bit and focus on the talent. I don't know. That may be the case, but I think Wales is just a tough spot. It's a tiny little country, and with not a large population, it's half the size of New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken. So it's tough to find that talent. And it's amazing Wales does as well as it does internationally, historically, given the size of the country. But I think that this is a side that is probably going to make a lot of mistakes in the game, some discipline mistakes. There'll be probably some ball handling mistakes, and there might be some judgment at times. And if I'm wrong, that's fine. But that's my expectation. We don't really know what we're going to see until they get on the pitch against the Bucks this weekend. But I'm expecting the Springboks to win this game handily, even though they're playing a lot of debutants.
Yeah, last time we played them was in that warm-up game before the World Cup, and we hammered them. I mean, that was just a complete and utter disaster for Wales. Not the kind of build-up they would have wanted. They ended up doing much better in the actual competition than we thought they would, but still fell short. So I don't know, just the inexperience is going to count against them. You said Eben on his own has 119 caps for the Springboks, and the entire Welsh pack have got 118 combined. Yeah, and I think that's gonna tell at the end of the day. I expect a hiding. I expect at least 20-point victory, and I'm being generous to them. I think it's going to be probably bigger than that. It's going to be a slaughter.
No, it could very well be, which means we'll just be enjoying the game.
Yeah. I actually saw them on the field yesterday. I was at Loftus to arrange something for this weekend, and I saw them practicing over there, and Rassie walking around there like the master tactician that he is.
The world's best paid water boy.
Marcel Coetzee said he's the world's best paid water boy. That's what he was doing with the Bulls lately. So yeah, that should be an interesting thing. I suppose Rassie gets paid more than Marcel. We'll see. Anyway, I think we've covered everything. That's it. Thank you.
All right, my pleasure. We'll look forward to doing this again, but expect to see the Bulls win this thing. If not, be very disappointed. I want to see 2 South African victories in 3 years. Should have been 3 for 3. But hey, the fact it's being played in South Africa is awesome. It just kind of messed up my travel. I had to buy a plane ticket, come back from Cape Town, and get a hotel for the night. But hopefully it'll be well worth it. Look, I'll tell you this much: 52,000 people at Loftus, something we haven't seen in 15 years. That alone is going to make it worth the trip, and that's why I bought my ticket. That's why I'm coming back up to the Highveld, which is where I'm at now. But I'm flying back to Cape Town today just to come back on Saturday. It'll make it worthwhile. So I'm looking forward to it. If you're going to the game, I'll walk around the pitch. You'll recognize me. I'm instantly recognizable with this Paul Kruger beard here. It's easy to spot me. If you want to say hello, I'm happy to do that. Take a selfie, chat for a bit. Anybody that's out there. So looking forward to it. And go Bulls. As a Stormers fan, I can do that. Go Bulls. And let's see the Bucks take that first victory of the test season against Wales. Thanks a lot.
This is the Rugby Ascendant podcast with Envia Velman and Chris Wyatt.